So just on 11 o'clock, we're on. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the call. This is a live webinar. So what I'd like you to do, if possible, is just jump into the chat window and just let me know if you can hear the audio, because, you know, technology, we just want to make sure it's all working for you before we get started. So if you can hear me, please just type into the chat, hi, welcome to the call. Now, a couple of things about a live interactive webinar. It's really important from my perspective that we do interact. So today's topic is how to build a referral-based business. And really, what I want to do is help you understand how you can get more referrals out of your business today. So I have one rule for the webinar, and that's interaction. So if you ask questions, if you throw up anything that you think about that might be related to referrals, I will try to answer your questions as we go through. And I have a couple of goals. Now, my first goal is that you come away from this webinar with some tangible, doable activities that will lift the number of referrals you're getting in your business. The second goal that I have is that I inspire you, and I inspire you to go out and actually look up some more information, read some books, go to some seminars, and just understand a bit more about how you can get more referrals within your business. The third thing I'd like to do is just to make sure that you as a business owner are making more profit, because ultimately getting more referrals into your business is also just about getting more bums on seats, getting more transactions through the door. So before we go into how to build a referral-based business, maybe I'll just tell you a bit about my background. My name is David Guest, and I've been running a business coaching practice for the last 18 years. During that time, I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of different businesses, and we've talked about different ways that they can build their marketing strategies, different ways that they can actually build their teams, and really fundamentally how to build a system within the business to make sure that the business continues to grow with or without the owner present. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about how you generate more referrals. And one of the reasons behind that is I think, you know, we did an interesting survey, and hopefully everyone's got the notes that we're going to go through for this webinar. If you jump onto the right-hand side in the chat box, I think you can download the workbook if you haven't done so already. If you don't have it, then just make sure you take some notes during the session, because there's going to be a lot of takeaways, a lot of things that we're going to be talking about that are quite applicable. But look, the first thing I want to talk about is some realities. So when it comes to getting referrals, statistically what I found is that it's interesting. We did a survey, and this is in the notes, and we asked business owners about where they get most of their business. Now, no surprise, most people say most of their business comes through word of mouth. So either referral or just people talking about their business, usually because they do a great job. And that's a good sign, right? Because that means that you've actually got a business that is sustainable. But then when we did the survey, we found that most people love referrals because they convert, right? And what I mean by that is 70 to 80% conversion rate is pretty normal for a referral. And the reason behind that is when someone's referred to you, they come to you as a person who's been recommended, or you've been recommended to them, which means that half of the sale is already done. Someone else has actually said, you should work with David, he's awesome. So when that person makes contact with you, they're already half sold. Now, what that means is you're going to get a high conversion rate. And typically people who do get high conversion rates usually are getting a lot of word of mouth business. The second question we asked was an interesting one, and it was, so if you're getting high conversion rate, 70+%, what amount of your business is coming from referral? And typically around 63 to 64% on average of the people we surveyed said their business, the majority or 60% of their business comes from referrals. So that's pretty sort of encouraging, right? That means you're running a good business, you're doing a good job, and people are talking about you. My next question stuns most people. I say, well, if referrals is your best source of leads, what system do you have in place to ensure you generate the maximum amount of referrals? 80% of people we surveyed said we don't have a referral system. Now, to me, that's crazy, right? You know it's your best source of leads. You know you get more than half your business from it. You know they convert most of the time, but yet you don't apply a system to it. But I'd rather spend money on advertising or marketing because I think, you know, I need to get new leads. Well, I'd suggest to you that that's putting the cart before the horse, right? Because if you build a referral system and then you advertise or market, what it means is every dollar you spend on marketing will generate more business for you, because every client that comes on board will also be optimized for referrals. So let's talk about some of the realities. The first one is this one. It's a funny thing, right? The first thing about referrals is that we are actually programmed to refer. Now, this sounds really weird, but let's go into a bit of science. There's a part of our brain called the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is the part of our brain that actually is programmed through nature, right? This is part of our, I suppose, sort of composure to actually help each other. Now, if you think about it, most people in life, their primary objective is to help other people. And we love helping other people. And when someone asks for your help, generally you'll say yes before you know even what it is. So we're actually programmed to help each other. We actually have a need to help. Now, this is the dichotomy, right? Because the other side, the second reality around referrals, is the biggest problem is this one, is fear. Now, what do I mean by fear? Well, you think about this. How many times have you asked someone for a referral for your business? And their immediate response is, look, I can't think of anyone right now. Now, what they're actually saying or thinking internally is, I'd love to refer you, but I don't know what's going to happen when I do. Are you going to stalk my brother-in-law? Are you going to harass them? Are you going to rip them off? I think the fear sometimes overrides the need. So even though we love helping each other, there's another part, and it's the same part of our brain, the hypothalamus, that actually is fearful of what might happen if we do refer. So often people will say they're interested in referring you, but sometimes, in most cases, they will never proactively refer you. So if we know that actually people are fearful of giving referrals because of the trust that they do or don't have with you, and we know that they want to help us, what we need to do is work out how do we actually engage a person that is programmed to help us in the first place. And it's really about reducing fear. We're going to talk a bit about that today as well. The third thing I want to talk about is this one. It's the word boring. What do I mean by boring? Okay. In simple terms, the majority of businesses out there are boring. And if your business is boring, you're actually making it harder for someone to overcome their fear of referring. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when you ask someone for a referral and their response is, I can't think of anyone, the reason they're saying that is because they're fearful of what's going to happen, and they're fearful that you actually might start selling to that person. But if your business is exciting, then what happens is people will refer you by the very nature of talking about what your business is. Now, if we look at a few examples of this, right? Probably one of my favorite examples of businesses that aren't boring would be Apple, right? You walk into an Apple store and it's very strange, right? Apple stores now are being very successful in a situation where most retailers are struggling to cope with the online sort of, onslaught. So how do they do that? Well, they revolutionized retail. What did they say? They said, we're going to create an Apple store, and it's not really about selling product because people can buy product anywhere. It's about service. Now, we expect customer service these days, so that's not exciting. How do they make it exciting? Well, what they do is they make sure that you get attended to from the minute you walk in the door. It's one of the very few retail stores that there's more retail salespeople working in than there is customers in the building most of the time. Why do they do that? Because they want to make sure you have exceptional customer service. It's not boring when you walk in an Apple store. It's full of geniuses. Now, what's an Apple genius? Well, it's a person that can help you with any of the problems that you may or may not have. Now, you might say, well, are they geniuses or not? Well, that's not the real issue here. The issue is that you walk in and you're treated like royalty, okay? Not boring. So we need to think about what can we do within our business that makes it exciting, that makes it noteworthy, that makes people want to talk about us. Another example on a greater scale is one of the questions I often ask people when we start coaching them in a business is, who would you consider to be a role model in business? Have a guess who 90% of the time is suggested as a role model for business. I'm guessing if you're like most people, it would be someone like Richard Branson. And then I ask the question, why is Richard Branson your role model? Most people say he's exciting, he's fun, he does over-the-top things, So he's actually quite aware of what he's doing, and he's created a personal brand that gets him talked about everywhere. Because people love Richard Branson because he's a fun guy. Is he really a fun guy? Yes. But the truth is, he's using marketing and advertising to actually put his brand out there, and it's nothing near boring. So what can you do in your business to actually move yourself away from your competitors, not by being cheaper, faster, brighter, or shinier, but not being boring, because people do not refer or recommend boring businesses easily. Let's talk about the third reality. And the third reality is a very interesting one. The third reality is that people actually value consistency Now, I want you to have a think about this, right? What do I mean by consistency? What I mean by that is that humans, by their very nature, crave consistency in their lives. When they look at a company that they want to deal with, what they're looking for is predictability so that they don't actually sort of get a bit sort of unsure about what's coming up. Now, the example I'll give you here is one of the biggest retail restaurants on the planet, McDonald's. Right? It's a very interesting case study because most people would rate customer service at McDonald's as fairly high. And one of the reasons they rate it as fairly high is because you walk in and you know what you're going to get. Some people will even travel the world and go to a McDonald's in a foreign country and buy a Big Mac just to see if it's the same. Ironically, it is. And what that does is it gives people a level of comfort with a business that they're dealing with because it's predictable. Now, think about McDonald's in reality. You walk into this restaurant, and it is a restaurant, and you queue up in a line and you get served by a kid behind the bar, behind the counter. He takes your order, he takes your money, he gives you your food on a tray wrapped in plastic. You have to then take it to the table yourself. You sit down, you can't even pull the chair in because it's concreted to the floor, and who cleans up after you? You clean up after yourself. So even though the quality, the actual level of service is pretty low, it's predictable, which actually gives people a feeling of consistency and high perceived value. So what are you doing consistently within your business to make sure that people have got an expected outcome? Remember, one of the fears we talked about up here is people may not refer you because they're not sure what's going to happen when they do refer you. If they know exactly your sales process, your marketing machine, how you actually roll your product out, it gives them a lot of trust in what you do, which means it makes it easier to refer. The last one I just want to talk about before we move on to the next topic is number 5, which is a reality around systems. Now, what do I mean when I talk about systems in relation to referrals? Well, I'll put it to you really bluntly and simply. Referrals can be systemized within your business, and the more systemized they are, the more likely you are to increase your referral number. Now, what do I mean by that? A system means something occurs whether you think about it or not. Having to ask for referrals is okay, but not ideal, because if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So if we create a referral system, what we can do is we can actually make sure referrals are flowing in on a regular basis at every point in time that's possible. Now, I'm going to suggest one thing here. There's at least a dozen books that are available that I've read on how to build a referral-based business. They're in the back of the workbook. I highly recommend that you actually grab a few of those, because in a short webinar, I can't give you everything. I'll just give you the best of what I've read, if everyone's cool with that. So we've covered the realities. Let's talk a bit about how to build the referral-based business. Now, at the very base of any sort of marketing strategy, we actually need to get out there in the marketplace, and people need to know about us. Now, I'm going to talk about some basics, but then I'm going to wrap it up in how this actually appears in a system, okay? So we need to systematically build our reputation out in the marketplace, because we live in a world where when I started sales and marketing 30 odd years ago, we used to have a statistic that we were taught every person has a network of around 200 people that they know. And if you actually connect with someone, you've got access to that network. Now, in the last 30 years, that's changed dramatically, because I don't believe it's 200 anymore. Now, everybody that you meet has either a LinkedIn profile or a Facebook profile, or they might be on Pinterest or Instagram, and they've got heaps of friends and a network that's quite large. So what you need to make sure is that people are aware of your existence. This comes back down to personal branding. This is one of Richard Branson's biggest secrets, right? Everyone knows who he is. And what that does is it allows him to actually start the referral system within his own business. So when we talk about no, I just want to give you a few examples around this, because there's an interesting sort of dilemma around this. I'll come back to that in a minute. One of the books I'm going to recommend, and I think it's in the, it's at the back of the workbook, is this fellow here, Chet Holmes. He wrote this book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And in there, he talks a lot about how to create a sales process, how to do sales training, and how to make sure that you've got very effective conversion. So I just want to talk about one of his philosophies, which is quite interesting. In his book, one of my favorite parts of it, and this is, I think, on page 3 of your notes, is called he calls it the stadium pitch. Now, what is the stadium pitch? Well, he says, imagine this. You've identified who your target market is. And what you do is you tell me who they are. I go to the MCG and I book it out, and I can have 100,000 people from your target market, and I guarantee you they're going to show up. But one of the rules is they have to show up, but they don't have to stay. And you stand up on stage, and as soon as you open your mouth, people are making decisions as to whether they're going to sit there and listen to you. Now, he calls this the stadium pitch, because often when people stand up in front of an audience, the first thing they do is they talk about their profession. You know, I'm David Guest, I'm a business coach. Now, if I did that in front of a room of 100,000 people, guess what's going to happen, right? So the stadium pitch sort of works in a pyramid. And what we know is that purely based on numbers, because sales is a numbers game, we know that if I said that at the start of my pitch, there's a certain percentage of people that are buying right now, right? That certain percentage of people has been established to be around 3%. So what that means is out of my 100,000, 97,000 people are about to get up and walk out of the room saying, not interested in a business coach. They go, right? 3% go, fantastic, we're in the market right now. This is so opportune that you've called today. Now, anyone who's been in sales has had a call like that, where you sort of ring and they say, how did you know we were looking for a real estate agent? And it's all about timing, right? Now, there's another percentage in here. And this one here, this is 7%. And this 7% aren't buying right now, but they're open to it. What that means is they don't get up and go. They go, you know, I've really I've heard about business coaching and it's been on my agenda for a while. I'm not buying right now, but I'm willing to listen. All right, you know, I'm in the market I'm thinking about selling my property, but I'm not selling right now, but I'm willing to hear what this guy's got to say, because we might be looking for a real estate agent in the short-term future. Here's the problem, right? 7 and 3 is 10%. 90% of the room is left. Now, when we talk about getting people to know you, if they've left the room, they're not going to know you, right? Because they've already gotten up and walked out because they've decided you're not interested. This last 90% is broken into 3 sections. Each one of those sections is 30%. So here's the first 30%. First 30% are not thinking about it. What do I mean? Never really thought about real estate, selling my property. And so they're sort of already walking out the door because it's never been on their mind. And then the next 30%, they've thought about it, but they think they're not interested. And then the last 30%, they're definitely not interested. What that means is they've either just bought, or they don't have the money, or they're sort of just out of the market. So here's the problem, right? When it comes to the stadium pitch, your objective is to hold as many people in the stadium for as long as possible. So the right way to do it is by not telling people who you are, because you're only going to get that top 10%, but by talking about what you can do for them. Now, here's the problem. I'm a real estate agent. I stand up and say, hey, I help people optimize the sale of their real estate. These guys are interested. These guys may stay. These guys are out, right? Because they don't think they're selling, okay? So how do I deepen my message? Well, I've got to be really cautious and really conscious of what's in it for them, right? Because they are in my target market. Remember, I said I'm filling the room with people in your target market, but they don't even know whether they need my service right now or what I can do for them. So how do I get my message across? I'll give you the simple answer, but the longer answer is get the book, because he talks about this quite well. The simple answer is that you need to think about your target market and work out what is the pain or what is the problem that you solve. Because if you can identify the problem that you solve, then you actually can help these people. Now, remember, some people are not in the market to sell their real estate today. But if you're a real estate agent, you're looking for either buyers or sellers, right? So maybe your introduction to these people need to be, if you're in the market to buy or sell property, there's 10 things you need to be looking out for to make sure that you get the best deal. I'm covering more people. I can go one step further and say, if you think you're going to be buying or selling property in the next 20 years, there's 10 things you should know now so you make the best decisions into the next 10 to 20 years. I'm covering more ground, right? So when you think about your initial message, especially when you're using social media or any of those broadcast channels, You need to be very conscious about not excluding people who think they're not in your market right now. And the way to do this is to change your message from a pitch for a product to a solution to a problem. So it's the features versus benefits, okay? Really important sort of viewpoint when we're going into this initial phase of building a referral-based business. Because the more people that know you, the more referrals you're going to get. And if you rely on just getting referrals from clients, you're being naive. You should be getting referrals from clients. You should be getting referrals from suppliers. You should be getting referrals from prospects. You should be getting referrals from friends. You should be getting referrals from your team members and their family and friends. So if you have a story that everyone's willing to share, you will broaden your reach beyond just your client base. So what happens after no? Like. Sounds simple, right? But how do I get people to like me? You know, this is a tricky question, right? Because if I'm just selling products and people have all had this experience, someone pitching a product at you, you can actually start to get really agitated because you know they're either going to try and sell you insurance or they're going to try and sell you something that you may or may not want. So like is about building rapport and building relationships, and it takes time, right? The way you get someone to like you is you actually listen to them. Now, a brilliant book written on this topic is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one of my favorite lines in the book is really about being interested versus interesting, right? If you want to be liked by people, you learn to take genuine interest in who they are and what they do, rather than trying to tell them how fantastic you are or how you can save their lives, right? Like is about empathy, right? So we need to make sure we're doing this through our communication channels as well. Now, if we keep going up here, because there's a few things that we need to get through just to get this noise, this communication happening in the marketplace, this is the big one. Here's the challenge, right? We're in an economy where we used to be in the information age and now we're in what's called the communication age. What does that mean? That means we get smashed by messages every single day. You know, we go back 20 years and the average person would receive something in the vicinity of maybe 1 to 200 marketing messages a day. These days, you turn on your phone, all the marketing messages are coming through your social media channels, through your SMSs, through your email. We get spam. What do we do when we get this overload of information? We start to shut down, right? We literally turn off to all the messages. Now, you go to an advertising agency or a marketing agency and what do they tell you? You need to market more, right? Here's the problem. The more you market, the more people become immune to your marketing message. So sometimes it's not just about marketing. Sometimes it's about building relationships. Building relationships starts by knowing who your target market is, getting them to like you because you're adding value prior to selling. How do I get someone to trust me? See, this is tricky, right? Because in a world of wheeling and dealing and all of these people promising the earth, the only way I can get someone to trust me is to engage with them, right? And so sometimes you have to give a lot of stuff away in the first instance to earn trust. You know, one of the best secrets to building trust quickly is to make and keep small agreements. And what I mean by that is if you say you're going to do something, do it, right? If you have a shop front in your business, make sure you're attending to people straight away. Don't harass them, but make sure they acknowledge that you're there. So building trust is quite important in this scale before we move into the marketing aspect of things. So, you know, really what we're doing here is we're just getting the world to know who we are, how we can help them, not how we sell our product, and then how do we build trust? Well, we need to engage, okay? And usually engagement these days is very easy because everything's interactive online now. Marketing used to be put an ad in the paper or in the yellow pages and people may call. These days, you post stuff on a social media site and people interact. They ask questions, you answer those questions, you give them information and you can build trust. Where previously you could never do that. So once you've done that, now we're starting to talk about the next step, which is I need to engage. Now, when I talk about engagement, try is a very interesting comment, right? Because I want you to think about this. Often we get a lot of advertising, a lot of marketing, a new restaurant opens in your area. You know about them because they advertise, they might go through social. You might like them because you like the kind of food. You may trust them because they're bricks and mortar, right? And you'll go out there for dinner one night. Now, here's the interesting thing about try. Try means that I'm willing to dip my toe in the water. Now, In a restaurant scenario, that means I'm going to go there for dinner one night. Now, typically you go to a restaurant, you try it out, and the waitress will come up to you when you're about into your second mouthful of food, and she'll say, "How's your meal?" Now, typically, what's the answer to that? You can't answer me because you're on webinar, but the answer is simple, right? Most people say, "Hey, it's good," right? Now, there's two reasons they say it's good. Number one is because they've got the next course coming and they don't want to complain too early. But the second reason, which is more truthful, is I don't want to hurt their feelings, and I don't want to be too confrontational, and, I don't like to be seen as a complainer. So, and people say, "No, not me, I tell them the truth," right? But I bet you, right, most of you will do this. You'll tell them that it's okay. You won't complain too much, but as you get up and pay your bill and you walk out the restaurant, you say to your partner, "Don't really need to go back to that restaurant." And we vote with our feet. Now, the problem is, when the waitress asked you the question, she wasn't genuinely interested in your answer. What she was doing is her job. I want you to imagine a different scenario. Same restaurant, you sit down and have your meal, you finish your meal, and the chef comes out of the kitchen. And he comes to your table and says, "David, we've just changed the menu, and I really am interested in how you felt about the selection on the menu and how your food was presented to you and how it tasted and how your experience was in my restaurant." Totally different experience for you, right? And the difference between trying a restaurant once and not coming back and trying a restaurant and then becoming a customer is totally different, right? Because it's all about sincerity. It's all about caring about the other person. Because the secret in business is not just to get people to try you out, it's actually to get them to come back. So we talk about buy, we talk about repeat. And if you can't get this right, then your referral engine is going to starve. It's not going to run, because you're only going to get the referrals at the top end of this if you can get all this to work. Okay? So we start down the bottom, know, like, trust. Then we move into try, buy, and then we move into come back, and then we move into telling other people about, how your service was. So it's sort of pretty simple, but I want to take you through some of the journey, okay? Because I think some people struggle with, how do I get all this to happen within my own business? So let's talk about what's happened in marketing over the past 20 years. Because if anyone's done a marketing degree, you'll know that when you do your marketing degree, they teach you the 4 Ps of marketing. Normally I'd ask you what they are, but I'm going to save you the effort. The first one is that you need to have the right product. You need to have it at the right price. You need to have it in the right place, and you need to have the right promotion. The 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. That's how we drive a marketing campaign. And anyone who's learnt marketing knows that that's actually the fundamentals of getting it right. But here's my conjecture: that's changed, right? With the advent of social media and internet, place becomes irrelevant. Promotion becomes secondary. Price, we think, is relevant, but I'll argue that people don't buy on price, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. And even product, right, is available broadly. So we've moved from the 4 Ps to what we call the 4 Cs, okay? Now, the 4 Cs of marketing, what are they? Well, the first one is, and anyone who's talked to a marketing company would have heard this term: content. Content is king. What does content mean? Well, we used to live in the information age, right? Which meant that if you could find the information, you were the person who yielded the power. What's happened is the internet has actually leveled the playing field. And what I mean by that is anyone, anywhere in the world that has internet access can find out anything, right? You just type it into Google and you find it. Really? You want to get more referrals? Go to Google and say, "How do I get more referrals?" And you will find a plethora of information, right? You need to be the person they find, right? So you need to start generating content, and you need to start doing it yesterday. And what I mean by that is you should be writing blogs, you should be doing videos, you should be doing interviews, you should be showcasing products, you should be showcasing case studies. Anything you can do to put content on the internet makes you a source of information for people who are searching. So we talk about content being king, but it's not about just having a really nice website anymore. It used to be. Now it's about being prolific in your content creation. So it's not about how do I write content. The question is, how do I make sure something goes out either every week or every day? People go, every day? Yes. How hard is it to publish content these days, honestly? You know, I can do a video on my iPhone, which is high definition, and I can have it published on YouTube within 1 minute. So when people say this is hard, I'd suggest this is how you do marketing these days. So if you don't have a content delivery strategy as part of your business, you're missing out. You don't need to do this, right? You can go back to the old model. But to me, this is finished, right? This is over, right? Anyone who's focused on this is going to struggle, because you can have someone working from their backyard or working from their bedroom who's pumping out videos every day on how to do stuff. And as people watch those videos, they start following that person. And that's where we build trust, right? We build trust by giving people useful information. The next thing that's really important is this one. A little bit different, but it's the word context. Now, what do I mean by the word context? So it's sort of simple, but it's also quite complicated. Context means, in essence, delivering the right information, the right content at the right time in the life cycle of the relationship with the client or with the prospect. Now, what does that mean? Well, the beauty of interactive or social media, or what they call Web 2.0, is that your prospects will actually talk to you through the internet while they're looking at your content. And as they talk to you, you can actually either be live, or you can have an automated system that delivers the content they need at the time they need it. Now, when we do that, right, what happens is we're meeting people where they are in the journey. Because some people are ready to sell their house today. Some people haven't even thought about buying a house yet. But they are all in my target market, because if they're thinking about it, I need to make sure that I'm giving them the right information at the right time. So context is about making sure the information you're delivering to a prospect matches where they are in the journey. Okay. Now, the next thing here is pretty interesting, right? Connection. Now, what do I mean about connection? Connection is really simple, right? We used to have, like when I started sales, it was interesting. There was only a couple of ways to connect with someone. It was either face-to-face or telephone, right? And you had email and you had pages, so you could sort of send messages to people. But now people are connected on so many different channels. You know, some people are big Instagrammers, some people are big YouTubers, some people, everyone has a different channel. Your job is to make sure you're connecting where your prospects are, right? And connecting means engaging. Now you can engage one-to-many through something like a webinar like we're running today. You can engage one-to-one in meetings. The question is, which is more leveraged? Now, I wouldn't replace one with the other. I'd run both. But the person who's not running webinars is not getting to present to hundreds of people. What they're doing is they're presenting one-on-one. People going to networking events. How many people can you connect with at a networking event? A certain number. I've got a question here. When people say they will send you a few names and never do, is it rude to ask again? Can I just park that question for one moment and I'll answer it for you? Okay, it's a good question though, right? Let's come back to this and then I'll turn to the question. So the last thing that I want to talk about here is probably the most powerful weapon that you have on social. It's a thing called community. Now, let's go back to the basics of referrals, right? People don't like referring because they fear what's going to happen. They're unsure, right? But they also want to help. So as you build a community, and what I mean by community, this is like your own Facebook page, or it might be your own meetup group. There's so many different ways to build a community. People actually will talk to each other because you brokered the relationship. So what happens is you walk into a room, you run a meetup group, you shout some scones or something, right? You do a little bit of content and you let people network. And the next thing you know, they build a community, but guess why? Because of you. So you need to be sure that you're not the only person creating the content. The content that you're creating is also being created by your community. I'll give you a really simple example. Some of you may remember a product called Encarta. So Encarta was an encyclopedia that you could buy from Microsoft, and it flopped, right? And one of the reasons it flopped is that it was a private enterprise. Some of you may have heard of another online encyclopedia called Wikipedia. Now, why is Wikipedia so successful when Encarta, which was backed by Microsoft, one of the biggest software companies in the world, failed? It's simple. Wikipedia allowed the community to build the content, right? Encarta relied on experts to build the content. So what happened is Wikipedia actually embraced the community and said, you tell us what you want us to put on this encyclopedia. We will just moderate what goes on and what doesn't go on, but we'll leave it to you. And it's been extremely successful in collating all the information from around the world. Now, going back to the question, so when you ask for referrals, okay, and one of the things I think I mentioned earlier is that there's two ways to get referrals, right? One is to ask, and the other one is to build a business that generates referrals coming inbound without asking. Now, when people say they're going to send you a few names and they never do, the reason is simple, right? This is what's happening. They need to help you, right? So they say, yeah, I've got a few people that are interested. But from the minute they walk away, they don't know what those people are going to say or think about them. Because when I refer you to someone I know, I'm actually giving that person part of my credibility, okay? And the fear that usually comes in is if that person that I referred to you stuffs up, it could damage my relationship with you, okay? So it is rude to ask, but I'll tell you how to do it, right? You've got to make it easy, right? And the way you make it easy for people to refer is you create parts of your business that are easy to share. Useful videos on YouTube, as an example, is easier to share than to say, hey, I know a good business coach you could talk to, right? Because when I started my business, I used to ask people for referrals. And the answer that would come back that surprised me is, I don't know anyone who's looking for a business coach right now. Because when you ask people for referrals, their initial filter is, I don't know anyone that's buying right now. So what we need to be thinking about is, how do I make it easier to refer? And this is where you go out of boring and go into interesting. So start creating things within your business that people are happy to share, that actually makes it easier to refer. Now, I hope that answers that question without being too specific. But to give you just a simple example, this webinar is a classic example. Okay, I'm giving away everything I know about referrals. Why? Because no one paid for the webinar, it's free. Because what happens is, if I can help you in some way, shape or form, then we're building some sort of relationship, some trust. Now, if you like some of these ideas and you share them with someone else, or if you send a copy of the webinar or the workbook to someone else, that's created a referral without asking, right? So my preference when it comes to building a referral-based business is that you don't ask for referrals all the time. You actually build a business that people can't help but refer. And it's a bit more sophisticated, but it actually ends up becoming a better source of referrals, and also allows you to increase that referral number. Now, I hope that answers that question. Got a couple more things to go through, and this might clarify a little bit more. See, I used to do sales training, and when you do sales training, what you realize is that there's 3 phases to any sale. And the first phase of a sale is really what's called building rapport. Now, in terms of my referral ladder, that's the know, like, trust section, right? Building rapport is about getting someone to know who you are, getting them to like you as a person, and getting them to trust your advice or your opinion. So once we do that, we start to move into the next part of the sale, which is simply called the sale. Okay. Now, here's my concern, right? If I build rapport with someone and I move into the sale, and I know that if they don't buy from me today, they're going to go and buy from my competitor, what am I going to do? Typically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to become what's known as a pressure salesperson. Now, here's the problem with being a pressure salesperson. You can actually throw someone from buying from you, even though you have a great product or service, because they feel you're too pushy. Now, why we get too pushy is because we're fearful that if they walk out of the room, they ain't going to buy from us anymore. Okay? So what we need to make sure is we have some sort of follow-up system. Now, I use the word system deliberately because it's not just about making sure you follow up, right? Follow-up can be very subjective. How often do you follow up? How do you follow up? Why do you follow up? What's the time between follow-ups? You know, the question is, should I call them and ask them for the names they promised me? Well, I'd suggest that you have to have a follow-up that actually converts you from being an annoying pest to a welcome guest, okay? No pun intended, right? But if you can think about it, if you call somebody, right, and you are seen as a salesperson trying to get something, which could be the names they promised you or a sale, people start to avoid your call. You become the annoying pest. So the question I have is, how do you turn that call around and make yourself a welcome guest? Now, there is only one way, right? And the only way is to make sure that when you make contact with that person, you have some information or something for them that's going to make their life or their day better. If you can add value to someone's life, they will welcome your call. If all you're doing is calling to chase their promise, you're actually going to become the annoying person in their lives. So your follow-up system has to be very clear and very deliberate. Now, when I show you this, we talk about two styles of selling. The old-fashioned style of selling, where people weren't really good at this rapport building and follow-up. What they used to do is they'd spend a little bit of time in rapport, they'd spend a lot of time focused on closing the sale and sales technique and pressure. And then they wouldn't bother following up because they figured that if the person didn't buy today, they're hardly worth following up. The real reason that happens is cost, right? Because everything I do here and everything I do here is unpaid, okay? So if it's one-on-one, if I have to build rapport by spending, lots of time with you, having coffees, talking about things and building relationship, that becomes a cost of the sale. If I have to follow up with you because you didn't purchase, that becomes a cost to the business as well. So in the one-on-one world, this does not make sense, right? And that's why people try and optimize the opportunity, which is the sale. See, in today's world, with the communication channels that we have, with content creation, we can actually build rapport way before the sale by investing a lot of time creating valuable content for our prospects, right? We can create that content, we can put it up on YouTube or on Facebook. It can be there forever. People can find it. People can watch videos of you. They can read your articles without having to talk to you, which means it minimizes your cost, which means you don't mind doing this, right? The other thing that happens is if you can build rapport online with people without having to talk to them face to face, there's a lot of relationship, no like and trust being built here. So when we go into try and buy, you don't have to work too hard because they've done all the research on you. They've done the research on your competition. They've built this relationship with a video of you or with your articles. And so when the sale comes along, they've already made the decision that they know, like, and trust you. Here's the other thing. Don't push for the sale, right? Because if you push for the sale and you end up pushing someone out the door or you start to sound desperate or aggressive, they're going to unsubscribe from your follow-up. You've got to trust your follow-up system. Now, I suggest that you design your follow-up system so it's very effective and it provides information like testimonials, case studies, cheat sheets, education, all the things that will help that person continue building the trust. Because sometimes when you miss the sale, it's only because they weren't ready to go. And some sales cycles are quite long. So you really need to be thinking in terms of how do I make sure that I have a rapport building system and a follow-up system, which means my effort and focus on sale is minimized. So this is the old style of selling. This is the new style of selling. And it really comes down to building content and process to make sure that I can actually build that relationship over time. So there's a couple more points that I wanted to talk about, and then I'm going to open up to a few questions. Probably this one, right? I think what happens is often people don't think enough about follow-up after the sale. So follow-up here doesn't just mean I haven't made the sale, I need to keep in touch. Follow-up here means that I've made the sale and I have a client. How do I make sure that client knows how to refer me and has useful content that they can share with people to send me referrals without me having to ask? Now, this is another story, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of cheats on how to do this, okay? Typically what happens is when I talk to someone about marketing, the very first thing that you need to understand in marketing is that you need to know who your target market is. Some people call it an avatar. Some people call it a target market, right? But if you can't define your target market well, and usually it's not defined well if it starts with the term anybody, so anybody who wants to sell a house is not a target market, right? It has to be much more defined than that, right? So what we need to do is we need to be thinking about how do we define our target market effectively? And I'll give you a bit of a light bulb moment, right? You need to do this. If you've been in business for a while, okay, and if you just move to, I think we're on page, I can't read it, 12. If you've been in business for a while, you will have a series of customers that have worked with you in the past. What I suggest you do is you print off the list of every customer that you've ever had and you rate them. Now, when you rate them, you're going to rate them as A, B, C, and D. And I don't want you to do this based on revenue or profitability. I want you to do it based on the enjoyment level of transacting with them, the kind of person they are, and then profitability after that. Down the bottom, you're going to have some customers that are what we call deadwood, right? Now, a dead customer is someone who every time the phone rings or an email comes in, you know they're going to cost you more than they make you. Now, we all have these, okay? And we hang on to them because scarcity, right? What I mean by that is we hang on to our D-grade customers because every customer is important. You don't want to let go of a customer because where's the next one coming from? But the reality of these D-grade customers is that, first of all, they cost you money every time you use them, which actually does two things, right? First of all, I suppose the obvious one, cost you money. Second of all is that they take time away from your day that you should be spending with your A-grade customers. The other side effect is if I ask a D-grade customer for a referral, guess what they send me? Another D-grade customer. So my suggestion is if you're getting low quality referrals, and I did notice the next question, we get referrals, but they're often low quality leads. This means lots of wasted time vetting leads. Excellent, right? There's a couple of symptoms. My first question for that challenge is who's referring, right? Is it a D-grade referring another D-grade? Because people hang around with each other. Because if that's the case, right, we need to make sure that we get rid of these guys. They're going to go, right? It's really tragic, and I know it's hard. There's a fellow by the name of Paddy Lund, right? Another book that I'm going to recommend that you get, right? This guy, Paddy Lund, he's a dentist in Brisbane, right? He runs a little business up there which has an unlisted phone number, right? You cannot get an appointment with this dentist unless you're referred by one of his existing clients. He's closed the door. Now, he did it on purpose because what he realized is I don't want people knocking on my door that I don't know where they fit on this. He only accepts A-graders, right? And so when you become a client of Paddy Lund, you sign a contract, and the contract actually stipulates that you will refer 2 people of similar stature to yourself every year that you actually use him as a dentist. Think about that. A contract that says your best clients will recommend 2 people like themselves. Have you got the guts to do it, right? I'll tell you what he did at the start, right? Because just a bit of history on this one, it's an important point. Most people don't know this, but dentists have the highest rate of suicide of all professions. And one of the reasons behind this is because it's a very stressful job. You spend 6 years in university, and then you spend the rest of your life inflicting pain on people who can't talk to you because their mouth's full of cotton wool. And so what he realized is he was heading down this track, and he was getting sort of quite stressed about his business. And he said, hang on, there's something wrong with this picture. He said, you know, out of all my clients, and there's an old rule called the 80-20 rule. Some of you may have heard this, right? The 80-20 rule stipulates that 20% of your clients produce 80% of your headaches. It also stipulates that 20% of your clients produce 80% of your profitability. And he realized that the majority of his clients were stressing him out. So one day he decided, I know how to fix this. I'm going to increase my price. He tripled his fee. He sent a letter to every client and he said, as of Monday, our fees are going up 3 times, triple. And here's the name of the dentist down the street who charges the same rate as I used to charge. Now, as you can imagine what happened when he sent that letter out, he lost 80% of his clients. But it was the 80% that were in this vicinity down here, right? So he actually got rid of all the people who were complaining about his fees because no one who complains about fees would pay triple. And what he kept is the people where money was not the obstacle because what they were after was high quality service. Very interesting story, very gutsy move, right? But sometimes we need to think in terms of what's the alternative so that we don't get poor quality leads. So the question, I think it was from Lisa, is it better to focus on recruiting new referrers or looking after your existing ones, right? It's a sort of funny question because my suggestion is both, but where do you get them, right? What I'd suggest is you rate your referrers based on this. So let's just go through the next one. So D's are the people who cost you money. C's basically stands for can't deal with. Now, what do I mean by that? Right? From a customer perspective, it's basically someone who shops around on price and is not loyal to you, right? Now, they exist, right? And they're not bad customers, but they're not great customers. So it's the person who goes to the restaurant for the first time and says, I'll check you out, is a can't deal with because there's no loyalty. Because if people are buying from you based on you being price competitive, they're loyal to the price, not to you. Now, you don't get rid of these guys, right? What you need to do with these guys is you need to educate them, right? So when we talk about do I get rid of referrers or do I get new ones, my suggestion is you get rid of D's, you don't get rid of C's. What you do is you train them. You train them. You train them on how to refer properly for you, right? Because if they're not referring properly for you, what they're doing is they're creating a lot of low quality leads. Remember what I said about Paddy Lund, right? You sign a contract that says I will refer 2 people of similar stature to myself. Similar stature to myself is a filter. Because if you send your 2-bit brother-in-law who doesn't pay his bills, it's going to reflect on you, okay? So it's quite deliberate what he says. He trains his customers to refer effectively. I suggest that you train your customers on how you want your referrals and what your ideal referral is. Because if they're sending low-quality leads, You've got to look in the mirror and say, maybe I'm not asking the right question. My suggestion is anything under there is no good, right? Anything under there is no good. So let's go to B and A and let's define them, right? So if we talk about a B grade, if we talk about a B grade client, to me what a B grade client is what's called a basic, right? And what do I mean by that? A basic client is loyal. A basic client values your service and is willing to pay your fee. But there's a difference between a B and an A grade client. An A grade client is this. What's the distinction between basic and awesome? An awesome client wants to refer you. They love you so much, they love your business so much that they want to make sure you survive so you can continue to serve them. Now, once again, the 80-20 rule applies. I guarantee you, everyone who's on this call, if you have a list of clients, there's going to be some of the clients that fit this category, right? Here's the secret to getting referrals. You identify exactly what it is about those people that makes them awesome. You identify everything you can about where they go, where they shop, what channels they use, what appeals to them, what cars they drive, how many kids they have, how old they are, everything you can about these people. And you build your whole marketing strategy around just these. Right? I'll accept a B grade all day long, and I'll even accept a C, but I'm not going to accept a C to stay a C. If you're not willing to be educated or trained to be an awesome customer for me, you're not going to serve my business, right? So you need to be really conscious of what this is. Specifically, you need to make sure that your marketing is actually targeting these, and you need to treat these people like gold, right? Because if I have a business full of awesome customers, I will not have to market ever again because they become my marketing and sales force. And that's exactly what Paddy Lunn did in his business. Now, there's a couple of people here, industries to focus on: solar, mortgage broking, IT managed services. All of these industries this applies to. Solar's tough, right? Because in the end, right, people buy solar once, right? So here's a little distinction for you. When we start thinking about A, B, and C and D grading our clients, I want you to take into consideration one really important point. You have clients and you have referral partners, okay? I want you to think about this, right? Who refers you the most? And I'll give you a really simple example. We were working with a company which was a kitchen manufacturer, cabinet maker. And one of the questions I'll often ask at the start of a program is, who's your target market and how often do they buy? And this guy said to me, well, we make kitchens and we sell them to people through using the local paper and through advertising on Google. So the average person buys a kitchen every 7 to 10 years, which means the amount of times that they repeat business is pretty low, right? So we talked about how do we improve or increase the number of transactions or how often people buy from you. Now, it's really hard to do with kitchens because unless you make a dodgy kitchen, people are going to keep it for 7 until they move house, right? And we had a bit of a realization. The realization was that if we're going to spend a marketing dollar, I'd rather spend it on someone who's going to buy a kitchen every week. Now, who buys kitchens every week? Only builders and architects or developers, right? So we took all the marketing dollars this guy was spending on local area marketing and we focused it on architects and builders. Now, what happens is you might get less people and the price might be more competitive, but the volume of work was huge, okay? Now, it's all about referral too. Now, so I want to ask you this question. Most people who are on this call, and the three that were mentioned, the solar, right, the financial planning, and the other one, what was that again, Tammy? Can you just show me that last question, please? Mortgage broking. Mortgage broking is a good one because, okay, how many times do I get a mortgage? Well, I probably get my mortgage refreshed every couple of years. But my question is, who else does my customer use as a professional service? Because they should be my strategic alliance partner. If you don't have a strategic alliance strategy in your business and you're not applying everything we've just talked about today to your strategic alliance partner network, you are missing out big time, right? Because we talked about community. And I would suggest that if you're in solar, you have to have a community of people that serve the same target market as you. You should be referring to and fro. There's heaps of referral networks around, but I'd suggest you actually go one step further than a referral network and you build your own. Because a good referral network or a good referral partner can actually change your business right around. Now, the first question, and we go back to the A, B, C, and D, is you're going to have different kinds of referral partners because everyone says, oh, yeah, I'll refer you whenever I know someone who needs a mortgage broker or know someone who needs solar, I'll send them your way. If I have to catch up with that person for coffee every month and nothing comes out of it, that's a negative, right? If it's someone who I can't deal with, then I need to educate them. If they're basic, they might send me a referral once every 3 months. If they're awesome, they're going to say, what can I do to get you into my database? All right. So there's all sorts of different industries, and I'm going to run out of time. And I'd love to cover every single one of these because we've talked about events, construction, bookkeeping, counseling, and community choir. Okay. So technically, every single one of those industries can actually utilize everything we've talked about today. All right. What I need to do, and this is where it gets a bit tricky, is I need to have a one-on-one conversation with you guys. Because as an example, if we talk about mortgage broking, what I would suggest you do as a mortgage broker is you need to be in touch with real estate agents. You need to be in touch with landscape gardeners. You need to be in touch with home service companies, right? Because anyone who has anything to do with someone who's either moving homes, buying homes, or building homes is a potential referral for you. Now, imagine turning around and identifying your referral network and starting to educate them on how to give you good referrals. Now, here's my first question. Why would a landscape gardener refer to a mortgage broker? Well, you could offer them money, but money doesn't drive behavior, right? Why would a landscape gardener refer to a mortgage broker? I'll give you the simple answer. What does the landscape gardener want, right? That's the question you need to ask. What does he want in his world? Because it's about him, it's not about you, right? How do you become the welcome guest in his life rather than the annoying salesperson trying to get a mortgage referral out of him? Find out what he wants. And I bet you, in most cases, a business owner wants more business. Find out how to give him a couple of clients. Because if you walk up to a landscape gardener and say, look, I've got a couple of clients for you, and I'm happy to give them to you, but I'd love to discuss how we can work together in the future, you've got a better chance of getting in the front door with that guy. So you build trust with people by understanding their needs and serving them rather than just looking for referrals all the time. Think of yourself as part of an ecosystem. And if you can contribute back to your partners, you can then ask. Or sometimes you don't even have to ask because the law of reciprocity kicks in, right? Someone's asked thoughts on BNI groups. I love BNI groups, because a BNI group is driven by referral strategy. There are some limitations, right? Because in BNI, they say we can only have one person from each industry in the room. That I'm not a fan of because I'm an abundance guy and I don't think we should restrict people to one from every profession. But having said that, I think it's one of the best strategies to initiate your network, okay? I'd suggest you learn about networking, you build your network. The tools are there. LinkedIn is a networking tool. Facebook is a networking tool. There's all these community-driven tools. Meetup groups is a networking tool. People just need to actually jump online. They're all free, right? And start building communities and thinking, ask this question. How do I add value to people? How do I give them a better life? How do I help them do their job better? And then work out how do I now trade what I'm giving them so that makes it and make it easy to refer. Because you start answering those questions and you'll get to a point where you've got more referrals coming in than you know what to do with. Now, I am conscious of time. We're 3 minutes off the hour. There's a couple of offers, and I hope this is up on the screen at the moment. We do a referability assessment. And what we do is we actually spend some time answering specific questions and giving you tips on how to get more referrals today. If you're interested in taking that offer up, you need to just jump online. You need to apply. We need to understand a bit more about you, your business. And then from that, one of our guys, myself or one of our guys, can actually sit down with you on the phone or on Skype, understand exactly what you're looking for and give you direct tips that you can apply straight away. Because to me, the best thing I can do for my business is prove to you that you can get more referrals by following our system. And if I can do that, I think you're going to be pretty excited. So look, I really appreciate your time today, guys. I know there's a few more questions. I'll try and answer them directly after the call. But if anyone would like to take advantage, to me, it's simple, right? We've talked a lot about theory today. And sometimes I sort of treat theory in a way like, you've got a two-part epoxy, right? I can teach you the theory around referrals, but you have a business or a specific situation. We need to actually have that conversation around your needs, your desires within your business and work out how to apply this part so that we actually get a benefit for both sides, right? So take advantage if you like. If you want to talk more about referrals, book in a time. You've got the availability to book into a calendar right there on the landing page. Fill out the questionnaire, give us a bit of a sense of who you are and what you're looking for. And I'd love to help you grow your business, and I look forward to hearing about your success. So thanks very much for your time today, guys. I wish you the best of luck.